January 31 is not an ordinary day, and this message is not arriving by accident. There are moments in time that look normal on the surface but are heavy with spiritual weight beneath, and today is one of those moments. Archangel Michael comes forward with urgency, not to alarm you, but to awaken you. He says that today acts as a turning point, a clear dividing line where confusion no longer has authority unless you allow it to remain. For many listening, uncertainty has felt like a fog you couldn't fully escape. You prayed, you waited, you questioned yourself, and you wondered why clarity seemed just out of reach. But now, heaven is responding. What felt delayed was not denied. It was being positioned for this precise moment. Archangel Michael speaks of January 31 as a threshold day. A day where something shifts not because circumstances suddenly change, but because you do. This is a moment where clarity replaces uncertainty and this is critical, you choose to receive it. Not force it. Not chase it. Receive it. There is a difference. Uncertainty has had power only because you were still searching outside yourself for confirmation that was meant to rise within. Today, that search ends. Today, truth is no longer hidden behind noise, fear, or overthinking. The clarity being released now is quiet, firm, and unmistakable. You may have felt an unusual restlessness leading up to this day. Not anxiety exactly, but a sense that something was unresolved, unfinished, or waiting. That feeling was not weakness. It was preparation. Archangel Michael says that confusion was never meant to be your permanent state. It was a signal, an alert that you were standing near a decision point that would change direction. And now you are here. January 31 is the moment when heaven steps closer, not to overwhelm you, but to steady you. This message carries urgency because clarity does not shout. It presents itself once the heart is ready. Many miss their turning point not because it never came, but because they were still replaying old questions when new answers arrived. Archangel Michael is clear. Today is not about revisiting the past, explaining every delay, or analyzing every misstep. Today is about alignment, about allowing truth to settle where confusion once lived, about opening what has already been placed before you. When Archangel Michael says, "Open this now," he is not speaking of curiosity. He is speaking of timing. Some doors respond only to obedience, not understanding. Some clarity comes after the step, not before it. And today, the spiritual atmosphere is charged with that kind of invitation. This is a day where insight is released to those willing to stop resisting certainty simply because it feels unfamiliar. You have lived with uncertainty long enough that clarity may feel strange at first. But strange does not mean wrong. There is a reason this message found you today and not yesterday, and not tomorrow. January 31 marks a shift where indecision loses its grip, where questions that circled endlessly begin to settle, where you no longer need 10 signs to move forward. Archangel Michael stands as a guardian at this turning point, sword lowered, not to fight you, but to protect the clarity that is coming in. His presence signals safety in decision, strength in movement, and peace in choosing. This is not a promise that everything will suddenly make sense in detail. It is a promise that you will know enough to move, enough to choose, enough to stop doubting your discernment. Clarity does not always come as a full map. Sometimes it comes as a single step illuminated in front of you. And today, that step is being revealed. The reason this moment matters so deeply is because uncertainty drains spiritual energy. It keeps you circling instead of advancing. It keeps you revisiting what God already addressed. Archangel Michael says that today marks the end of that cycle. for those who are willing. Willingness is the key, not perfection, not readiness by human standards. Willingness to say, I receive what is being shown to me now, even if it challenges what I expected. This turning point is internal before it is external. The clarity arriving today settles first in the heart, then in the mind, and only later in circumstances. That is why some will feel peace before they see change. That peace is not imaginary. It is confirmation. It is the sign that uncertainty has lost its authority. Do not underestimate this day. Do not scroll past it, dismiss it, or tell yourself you will return to it later. Archangel Michael's message is clear. Later is not guaranteed in moments of alignment. Today is active. Today is open. Today is the hinge on which the next chapter swings. January 31 stands as an invitation, not a demand. But invitations unanswered eventually expire. The clarity meant for you now is gentle, but it is firm. It is ready to replace the questions you've been carrying. It is ready to settle the noise. It is ready to anchor you. This is the moment of the turning point, and it begins the instant you choose to receive it. There is a reason uncertainty stayed longer than you expected, and it was never because you lacked faith, wisdom, or effort. Archangel Michael reveals that confusion often lingers not as punishment, but as protection. There are seasons where clarity is delayed because acting too early would have exposed you to battles you were not meant to fight yet. What felt like silence was actually restraint. What felt like wandering was containment. Heaven was holding you back, not to frustrate you, but to keep you aligned with the right moment. And now, that moment has arrived. Uncertainty followed you because something valuable was forming beneath the surface. You were being trained to listen deeper, to discern beyond emotion, and to recognize truth without needing constant reassurance. Archangel Michael says many of the answers you asked for months ago could not be trusted by the version of you that existed then. Your perspective had to mature. Your discernment had to sharpen. Your heart had to become steady enough to hold clarity without panicking or rushing. That is why the fog remained. It was not meant to confuse you forever. It was meant to prepare you for certainty. There were also unseen battles surrounding your decisions. Archangel Michael speaks openly about resistance that intensified precisely because you were close to alignment. When clarity approaches, opposition often increases, not because clarity is weak, but because it is powerful. The enemy does not fight what is insignificant. The prolonged uncertainty was a sign that your next step carries weight. What you choose after clarity arrives will set direction, influence others, and open doors beyond what you currently see. That is why hesitation tried to anchor itself so deeply. Another reason uncertainty stayed is because you were still seeking external validation for an internal knowing. You looked for confirmation in people, signs, timing, and circumstances, when the truth was already being whispered inside you. Archangel Michael says this gently. The clarity you've been waiting for was never meant to come from outside voices alone. It was meant to rise within you, anchored by peace rather than pressure, until you were ready to trust that inner stillness. Uncertainty remained as a teacher. You may have noticed how every time you almost decided, doubt rushed in with what ifs. What if you fail? What if you're wrong? What if you misheard? That pattern was not random. It was a distraction strategy designed to keep you cycling instead of stepping forward. But today, that cycle is exposed. Once something is exposed, it loses its power. January 31 marks the day where uncertainty is no longer mysterious. It is understood. And what is understood can be released. Archangel Michael emphasizes that uncertainty followed you because you were being positioned at a crossroads, not a dead end. Crossroads require clarity because every direction matters. You were not meant to rush through this. You were meant to arrive here with awareness. Now, you are standing at that intersection with maturity, patience, and strength you didn't have before. That is why clarity can finally land without destabilizing you. This is also why today feels different. The weight of uncertainty is shifting. It no longer feels heavy, it feels ready to lift. The questions that once felt overwhelming now seem quieter, almost distant. That is not coincidence. That is transition. Archangel Michael says when uncertainty begins to lose its emotional charge, it is a sign that clarity is close enough to touch. And this is where your participation matters. Clarity does not force itself. It responds to engagement. That is why being present with this message is not accidental. If you are listening, it means your spirit is already leaning toward alignment. You are already choosing differently, even if you haven't fully realized it yet. This is why I want to pause here and invite you into something important. If this message is resonating, if you feel that inner confirmation that something is shifting for you today, take a moment to engage with it. Like this message, share it with someone who has been stuck in uncertainty, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. This is not about numbers, it is about alignment. When you engage, you are declaring readiness. You are signaling, both spiritually and practically, that you are open to clarity and guidance. Comment something simple like "I receive clarity," not for visibility, but as an act of agreement. Engagement is not passive here, it is participatory. Archangel Michael says that uncertainty stayed only as long as it needed to. It has done its work. It has taught you patience, depth, and humility. Now it must make room for direction. January 31 is not about revisiting why things were unclear. It is about recognizing that they no longer need to be. You are not behind. You are on time. And what comes next will make sense of what came before. Uncertainty followed you until today because today is when you were finally ready to release it. And once you do, clarity will not struggle to enter. It will settle naturally, like something that always belonged to you. Archangel Michael says that clarity does not arrive by accident. It responds to a decision. Not a loud decision. Not a dramatic declaration. But a quiet, internal choice where you stop bracing yourself for confusion and allow truth to settle. This is where many people struggle, not because clarity is unavailable, but because receiving it requires release. You cannot hold uncertainty and clarity at the same time. One must be laid down for the other to enter. And today, January 31, you are being invited to make that exchange. To choose to receive does not mean you suddenly feel fearless or perfectly confident. It means you stop postponing peace. It means you recognize that waiting for absolute certainty before moving is often the very thing blocking clarity. Archangel Michael explains that uncertainty feeds on delay. The longer you hesitate, the more doubt tries to disguise itself as wisdom. But clarity does not argue. It waits for consent. It waits for you to say, "I am ready to see what is being shown, even if it challenges what I expected." There is a sacred responsibility attached to clarity. Once you receive it, you are accountable to act on it. That is why the soul sometimes resists. Deep down, you knew that once the fog lifted, excuses would no longer work. You would no longer be able to say, "I didn't know," or "I wasn't sure." Archangel Michael says this gently, not as pressure but as truth. Clarity empowers, but it also calls you forward. And not everyone is ready to be called. This is why fear often disguises itself as patience. You told yourself you were waiting on timing, but in reality, you were waiting to feel safer. Yet safety is not always the confirmation God gives before movement. Sometimes safety comes through obedience, not before it. January 31 is one of those moments. A moment where clarity arrives with an invitation, not a guarantee of comfort. But it does come with peace. Archangel Michael says that choosing to receive clarity today means releasing the need to overanalyze. It means letting go of rehearsed conversations, imagined outcomes, and worst-case scenarios. Those thought loops were never protection. They were barriers. They kept you busy enough to feel productive while staying in the same place. Today, the pattern is broken. The clarity being offered now is simple, direct, and stabilizing. It may not answer every question, but it will answer the right one. There is also a narrow window connected to this choice. Not because God withholds, but because moments of alignment are time-sensitive. Just as fruit must be picked when ripe, clarity must be received when it is offered. Archangel Michael says this window does not close out of anger, but out of order. If you ignore it, you may still reach clarity later, but through a longer, more difficult route. Today offers ease. Later may require effort. That is why the invitation is urgent. You may feel something stirring as you listen, an inner yes that feels calm rather than excited. That calm is the signal. Clarity often arrives without fireworks. It arrives as a settling, a knowing, a sudden sense that you already understand what must be done, even if you haven't said it out loud yet. That is the moment you choose to receive. Archangel Michael warns against waiting for clarity to look dramatic. Most divine guidance is subtle because it respects your free will. It does not overwhelm. It invites. And today, the invitation is clear. Stop postponing the decision that peace is waiting on. You are not being rushed. You are being released. This choice unlocks more than answers. It unlocks momentum. Once clarity is received, energy returns. Motivation follows. Emotional heaviness lifts. Things that felt complicated begin to simplify. That is the fruit of alignment. And it begins with one internal agreement. I receive what is being revealed to me now. Before moving forward, Archangel Michael asks for a moment of agreement. Not with fear, not with pressure, but with truth. Type I receive clarity in the comments if this message resonates with you. Blessing code 317 is now activated. As you do, understand that this is not symbolic. It is intentional. Words spoken in alignment carry weight. This activation marks your willingness to step out of uncertainty and into direction. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. As this clarity begins to open within you, I want you to understand something sacred. When you support this channel, you are not supporting a voice. You are helping God reach souls standing in the same uncertainty you just came out of. I hear the Lord saying, as you sow into this word, I will cause clarity to rise like morning light in places you cannot see yet. I feel led to tell you this personally. Your obedience in giving becomes a key that unlocks understanding for someone else. This is a prophetic moment to act. Not later, not someday, now. Let your support become a seed placed into fertile ground, and I release blessing over every giver, that confusion will never rule your decisions again. You super thanks. Join the membership. We're so through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on screen. Do it now, and let heaven respond to your obedience. Today, Archangel Michael steps forward in a way that feels both firm and deeply reassuring. His presence is not loud, but it is unmistakable. He does not arrive with chaos or fear, but with order, with steadiness, with truth that does not need to defend itself. When Archangel Michael steps forward, it signals that something must be separated: truth from confusion, courage from hesitation, alignment from distraction. And January 31 carries that exact assignment. Archangel Michael is known as the defender, the protector, the one who stands between chaos and God's order. But today, his role is also that of a revealer. He says this is not a time for vague impressions or half answers. This is a time where lines are drawn clearly, not to restrict you, but to free you. Confusion thrives in blurred boundaries. Clarity comes when things are defined. And today, definition is being restored. He speaks of his sword not as a weapon of destruction, but as an instrument of precision. A sword separates what was never meant to remain joined. It cuts through illusions, false responsibilities, misplaced guilt, and borrowed fears. Many of the things weighing on you were never yours to carry. They attached themselves during seasons of vulnerability, disappointment, or waiting. Archangel Michael says that today, those attachments are being severed. Not violently, cleanly. You may feel this as a sudden sense of resolve, or a quiet firmness rising where indecision once lived, or even a realization that certain options are no longer options at all. That is not loss, that is protection. When Archangel Michael steps forward, he narrows the path, not to limit you, but to keep you from wandering. He removes the unnecessary so the essential can finally be seen. This is also a day of spiritual defense. Not because you are under attack, but because you are advancing. Protection intensifies when movement begins. Archangel Michael stands guard over what is being revealed to you today so that clarity is not stolen by doubt later. He says that once truth is shown, it must be guarded. Not guarded with fear, but with commitment. Commitment to honor what you know, even when emotions fluctuate. Many people misunderstand clarity as a feeling that never wavers. But clarity is not emotional consistency. It is directional certainty. Your feelings may still rise and fall, but your direction no longer changes with them. That is what Archangel Michael is establishing now. A direction that holds steady even when the road feels unfamiliar. He also addresses the internal conflict some are feeling right now. A tension between relief and resistance. Relief because things are finally making sense. Resistance because moving forward means leaving something behind. Archangel Michael says this tension is normal at turning points. You are not doing something wrong by feeling it, but you must not let it decide for you. Feelings are passengers here, not drivers. January 31 marks the moment where Archangel Michael takes a stand beside you and says, enough circling, enough postponing, enough second-guessing what has already been revealed. His presence brings authority to your next step. You are not moving alone. You are not guessing blindly. You are being escorted into alignment. He also speaks about the peace that follows obedience. Not instant comfort, but lasting stability. The kind that doesn't disappear when circumstances shift. That peace is available today, not because everything is resolved, but because you are finally resolved. And resolution is powerful. There is something else Archangel Michael wants you to understand. Clarity is not only about what to do, it is also about what to stop doing. Stop revisiting conversations that are already finished. Stop reopening doors God has clearly closed. Stop negotiating with fear as if it has something valuable to offer. Those habits were survival mechanisms, not wisdom. And survival is no longer your assignment. As Archangel Michael steps forward, He creates space. Space for confidence to return. Space for trust to grow. Space for you to hear God without interference. That space may feel unfamiliar at first because you've lived with noise for so long, but do not rush to fill it. Let it settle. Let clarity breathe. Today is not about dramatic transformation. It is about rightful positioning, about standing where you were always meant to stand, with vision unobstructed and heart steady. Archangel Michael does not push you forward. He stands firm so you can. This part of the journey is sacred. It deserves your attention, your respect, and your honesty. You are not being tested. You are being trusted. Trusted with insight. Trusted with direction. Trusted with the next step. And as Archangel Michael steps forward today, understand this. What is being revealed now will not contradict peace. It will confirm it. And once you accept that confirmation, there is no need to look back. There are moments when the soul recognizes a shift before the mind can explain it. Archangel Michael says that today's turning point does not always announce itself with dramatic events. More often, it reveals itself through subtle but unmistakable signs. These signs are not meant to impress you. They are meant to confirm you. They whisper, "You are standing in the right place at the right time." And if you listen carefully, you may already be noticing them. One of the clearest signs that today is your turning point is a sudden inner clarity that feels calm rather than rushed. You may find that a decision you once overthought now feels settled, even if the details are not fully worked out. This calm is not resignation, it is alignment. Archangel Michael says when confusion leaves, it rarely slams the door, it quietly releases its grip. You stop wrestling. You stop rehearsing. You simply know enough to move forward. Another sign is a growing discomfort with old patterns. Things you once tolerated, certain conversations, habits, or emotional cycles, now feel heavy or unnecessary. This discomfort is not judgment, it is discernment sharpening. When clarity approaches, misalignment becomes harder to ignore. Archangel Michael explains that this is your spirit signaling readiness for change. You are no longer willing to carry what no longer serves the direction you are being called into. You may also notice an unusual sense of urgency paired with peace. Not anxiety, not pressure, but a quiet awareness that something is ready now. This urgency does not push you, it invites you. It feels like timing clicking into place. Like the moment before dawn when the sky has not yet changed color, but you know morning is inevitable. That is the atmosphere of a turning point. Another sign is that outside noise begins to lose influence. Opinions that once swayed you no longer carry the same weight. Advice that once confused you now feels irrelevant. Archangel Michael says when clarity rises, external voices naturally quiet because they are no longer needed for validation. You are not becoming isolated. You are becoming anchored. Anchored people do not drift with every wave. You may also feel an emotional release that is difficult to explain. A sudden lightness. A breath you didn't realize you were holding finally letting go. This release is not weakness. It is healing. It is the body responding to the soul's decision to stop living in uncertainty. Archangel Michael says clarity often heals before it directs. It restores stability before it demands action. Another sign that today is your turning point is an increase in discernment. You may find yourself seeing situations, people, or opportunities more clearly, without the emotional fog that once blurred your judgment. You are not becoming harsh or critical, you are becoming honest. Honesty is a fruit of clarity. And honesty, when guided by peace, leads to freedom. You might also notice that fear no longer argues as loudly as it once did. It may still appear, but it does not dominate. Its voice is weaker. Its threats feel hollow. Archangel Michael says fear loses its authority when clarity is received because fear thrives on the unknown. Once direction is established, fear has nothing solid to stand on. Another sign is a renewed sense of purpose, even if you cannot yet articulate it fully. You may feel drawn toward certain actions, conversations, or changes without fully understanding why. This is not impulsiveness. It is intuition aligning with divine timing. Turning points often begin with attraction before explanation. You feel pulled before you see the full picture. You may also recognize a shift in prayer. Instead of asking the same questions repeatedly, you find yourself listening more than speaking. There is less striving, less pleading, and more trust. Archangel Michael says when clarity arrives, prayer becomes communion rather than negotiation. You are no longer trying to convince God to speak. You are allowing yourself to hear. One of the most important signs is peace in the midst of uncertainty. This may sound contradictory, but it is not. Clarity does not remove all unknowns. It removes fear of them. You may still not know every outcome, but you no longer feel threatened by that fact. Peace becomes your confirmation, not excitement, not certainty by human standards. Peace. Archangel Michael emphasizes that these signs are cumulative. You may not experience all of them at once, but even one is enough to confirm that a shift is underway. Do not dismiss small changes. Turning points often begin quietly because they are foundational. Odd moments attract attention. Quiet moments build direction. Today, January 31, is marked by these subtle confirmations. They are not meant to overwhelm you, but to steady you, to reassure you that clarity is not approaching, it is already present. Your role is not to chase it, but to honor it, to acknowledge what you already sense, to trust what is settling within you. Do not rush past this awareness. Sit with it. Let it integrate. Turning points are not about speed. They are about alignment. And alignment, once established, carries you further than force ever could. These signs are not coincidences. They are confirmations. And together, they declare what Archangel Michael wants you to know today. You are standing at the threshold of change, and clarity has already begun to replace uncertainty. When clarity finally replaces uncertainty, the change is not always loud, but it is unmistakable. Archangel Michael says the first thing that shifts is not your circumstances, but your inner posture. You stop bracing for confusion. You stop waking up with the same unanswered questions circling your mind. Instead, there is a quiet sense of orientation, like finally knowing which direction you are facing. Even before anything outward changes, you feel internally aligned, and that alignment begins to alter everything. One of the most immediate changes is how decisions feel. What once felt heavy, overwhelming, or paralyzing now feels lighter, even if the decision itself is significant. You no longer need to replay every possible outcome. You no longer need excessive reassurance. Clarity simplifies choice. Archangel Michael explains that clarity does not remove responsibility, but it removes torment. You are still choosing, but you are no longer suffering through the process of choosing. Another change is emotional relief. Prolonged uncertainty quietly drains the spirit. It creates fatigue that rest alone cannot fix. When clarity arrives, that hidden exhaustion begins to lift. You may notice you are less irritable, less tense, less mentally scattered. This is not because your life suddenly became easy, but because your energy is no longer being wasted on inner conflict. Direction restores strength. Clarity also changes how you relate to time. When you were uncertain, time felt like pressure. Every day felt like another reminder that you hadn't figured things out yet. After clarity replaces uncertainty, time becomes a tool instead of a threat. You stop rushing yourself. You stop comparing your pace to others. Archangel Michael says clarity anchors you in divine timing, not social timing. You move with intention, not anxiety. Relationships also begin to shift. Some connections naturally deepen, while others quietly fade. This is not punishment. It is alignment. When you are clear, you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop shrinking to maintain harmony. You communicate with more honesty and less fear. Some people will resonate with this version of you, and others will not. Archangel Michael says clarity brings relational honesty. It reveals who is aligned with your direction and who was only comfortable with your confusion. Another changes how you respond to obstacles. Before clarity, obstacles felt like signs you were on the wrong path. After clarity, obstacles are seen as part of the path. You no longer interpret resistance as rejection. You see it as refinement. This shift is powerful because it keeps you moving forward instead of constantly reevaluating whether you should stop. Clarity gives resilience. Your thoughts also change. The constant mental loops begin to slow. You think more deliberately. You are less reactive. When doubts arise, they do not spiral, they pass. Archangel Michael says clarity disciplines the mind. It teaches your thoughts to follow direction instead of fear. Over time, this mental stability becomes one of the greatest fruits of clarity. Clarity also restores trust. Trust in God, and trust in yourself. Many people do not realize how deeply uncertainty erodes self-trust. Every delay, every reversal, every moment of confusion subtly teaches you to doubt your discernment. When clarity replaces uncertainty, that trust begins to rebuild. You start believing that you can hear, sense, and respond correctly. This confidence is not arrogance, it is spiritual maturity. Another significant change is momentum. Once clarity is established, movement follows naturally. You stop forcing progress and start cooperating with it. Doors begin to open, not always dramatically, but consistently. Small steps line up. Conversations happen at the right time. Opportunities emerge without strain. Archangel Michael says clarity attracts provision because provision follows purpose. You may also notice a renewed sense of purpose. Even if your role has not changed, how you engage with it does. You act with more intention. You see meaning where you once saw obligation. Purpose is not always about doing something new. Sometimes it is about doing the same things with a clear heart. That clarity transforms effort into offering. Importantly, clarity also changes how you handle fear. Fear does not disappear entirely, but it loses its authority. It becomes information, not instruction. You acknowledge it without obeying it. Archangel Michael says this is one of the clearest signs that clarity has taken root. Fear speaks, but it no longer leads. There is also a spiritual shift that occurs. Prayer becomes simpler. You pray less out of desperation and more out of connection. You stop asking God to fix confusion and start asking for strength to walk out what hath been revealed. This change in prayer reflects a change in posture, from uncertainty to partnership. Finally, clarity brings peace that endures. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything going well, but the kind that remains steady even when challenges arise. This peace is not passive, it is grounded. It is the peace of knowing you are where you are meant to be, doing what you are meant to do, one step at a time. Archangel Michael wants you to understand that clarity is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of alignment. It does not remove effort, but it removes confusion. And once uncertainty is replaced, you no longer walk in circles. You walk forward. This is what changes after clarity arrives. And this is why January 31 matters. Because what begins internally today will soon be reflected externally. Direction has been established. Momentum is building. And the path ahead, though not fully visible, is finally clear enough to walk. There are moments in life that feel optional, but carry eternal weight. Archangel Michael says January 31 is one of those moments. Not because God becomes distant if you hesitate, but because alignment moments are sacred intersections. When they are ignored, the soul does not remain neutral. It drifts. This is not a message of fear. It is a message of truth. Ignoring clarity does not lead to punishment, but it does lead to prolonged wandering. One of the first spiritual consequences of ignoring this moment is delay. Not denial, but delay. When clarity is offered and not received, progress slows. You may still move, but without direction. Effort increases while momentum decreases. Archangel Michael says this is one of the most exhausting places to live, where you are active, but not aligned. Busy but not advancing. That exhaustion many have felt recently did not come from doing too much. It came from moving without clarity. Another consequence is the return of confusion, often louder than before. When clarity is resisted, uncertainty does not simply wait politely in the background. It reasserts itself with greater intensity. Doubt becomes more persuasive. Fear becomes more creative. Old questions return with new force. This happens not because clarity was false, but because it was unclaimed. Truth unattended becomes vulnerable to distortion. Archangel Michael explains that hesitation teaches the mind to mistrust revelation. Each time you delay obedience, you reinforce the belief that clarity cannot be trusted. Over time, this erodes discernment. You begin to question even the most obvious direction. What once felt clear becomes blurred again, not because God stopped speaking, but because the heart stopped responding. Another spiritual consequence is misalignment. When you ignore a turning point, you do not stop moving. You simply move in directions that are not optimal. Opportunities arise that look similar to what you desire, but lack peace. Relationships form that feel intense but unstable. Paths open that require constant justification. Archangel Michael says misalignment is subtle. It does not announce itself as wrong. It feels always right. That is what makes it dangerous. Here is also the cost of mis-ease. Every aligned moment carries grace, divine assistance that makes movement lighter. When you step outside that window, grace does not disappear, but it changes form. What could have been simple becomes complex. What could have been smooth requires correction. This is not punishment, it is consequence. The universe responds differently when you move with clarity versus when you move in resistance. Emotionally, ignoring this moment often leads to restlessness, a persistent feeling that something is unfinished. You may succeed externally while feeling unsettled internally. Archangel Michael says this restlessness is the soul remembering a moment it passed by. Not to shame you, but to remind you. The soul always knows when alignment was offered. Spiritually, there is also the consequence of diminished sensitivity. When clarity is repeatedly ignored, the heart can become dull to guidance. Not closed, but cautious. Protective. You may find yourself asking for signs while ignoring peace. Wanting confirmation while avoiding commitment. This creates a cycle where revelation increases but responsiveness decreases. That cycle is difficult to break once established. Another consequence is increased reliance on external validation. When inner clarity is ignored, you look outward for reassurance. You ask more people. You consume more information. You seek certainty from sources that cannot provide it. Archangel Michael says this external dependence fragments discernment. Too many voices create noise, and noise drowns out truth. There is also the spiritual cost of prolonged indecision. Indecision is not neutral. It is a slow drain. It keeps you in a state of spiritual tension where energy is constantly leaking. Over time, this leads to discouragement. You may begin to believe that clarity is not for you, or that guidance is reserved for others. That belief is a lie, but it becomes convincing when alignment moments are missed. Archangel Michael emphasizes that none of these consequences are irreversible. Mercy remains. Grace remains. Guidance remains. But restoration after resistance requires humility. It requires retracing steps, unlearning patterns, and reopening the heart. This is why responding now matters. Not because later is impossible, but because now is simpler. Ignoring this moment does not make life fall apart. It simply keeps it from coming together. It prolongs lessons that were meant to conclude. It extends seasons that were meant to shift. And it delays the peace that clarity brings. This message is not meant to pressure you. It is meant to honor you. Heaven does not warn what it does not value. Archangel Michael speaks because your direction matters. Your choices matter. Your response matters. January 31 is a marker. A hinge. A threshold. What you do with it will shape the terrain ahead. Ignoring it does not remove God from your path, but it does remove the shortcut. It replaces alignment with endurance. The truth is this: clarity is being offered because you are ready, and readiness is a gift. Do not treat it casually. Do not assume it will feel the same tomorrow. Honor the moment while it is open, because the greatest spiritual consequence is not making a wrong choice. It is making no choice at all when truth is standing in front of you, waiting to be received. Archangel Michael says that before clarity fully settles, there is always a test, not to disqualify you, but to confirm your readiness. This test is not external. It does not come as a challenge from people or circumstances. It happens quietly within the heart. It asks one simple but profound question. Are you willing to receive clarity even if it requires you to change how you've been living, thinking, or waiting? Many people believe they want clarity, but what they truly want is reassurance that nothing has to change. Archangel Michael reveals that this is where resistance often hides. You may say you want direction, but still cling to old narratives, familiar struggles, or expectations that no longer fit where God is leading you. The clarity test reveals whether you are open to truth, or only open to confirmation of what you already decided. This test often shows up as an invitation to release something: a habit, a mindset, a relationship dynamic, a role you have outgrown. You may feel a gentle nudge telling you, this no longer belongs in your next season. The test is not whether you notice the nudge. The test is whether you honor it. Clarity cannot fully land in a heart that insists on holding on to what is expired. Archangel Michael says readiness is not about having everything figured out. It is about humility, about being teachable, about allowing God to rearrange priorities without arguing for control. When clarity approaches, pride resists, but humility receives. This is why some people remain stuck for years while others move forward with far less information. Readiness is not about knowledge, it is about surrender. Another aspect of the clarity test is trust. Trusting that what is being revealed is for your good, even if it disrupts comfort. trusting that God's timing is wiser than your fear, trusting that obedience will not abandon you. Archangel Michael says clarity often asks, will you move before you see proof? If the answer is yes, alignment accelerates. If the answer is no, clarity waits at the door. You may also notice the test showing up as emotional resistance. A part of you may want to delay, to double-check, to ask for one more sign. Archangel Michael explains that discernment asks for confirmation, but fear asks for guarantees. Guarantees are not how faith operates. Clarity provides direction, not control. The test is whether you can move with peace instead of certainty. This is where many overthink. They confuse caution with wisdom. But wisdom is calm, caution is tense. Wisdom listens, caution argues. If your hesitation is noisy, anxious, and repetitive, it is not wisdom, it is fear trying to negotiate. Archangel Michael says clarity speaks once, then waits. It does not beg for attention. It respects your free will. Another sign you are in the clarity test is a sense of inner exposure. You may feel like excuses no longer work, even with yourself. You can no longer pretend you don't know what needs to be done. This is uncomfortable, but it is holy. Truth exposes not to shame, but to free. Once exposure happens, neutrality is no longer an option. You either receive clarity or resist it. Archangel Michael emphasizes that readiness does not mean you feel strong. It means you feel honest. Honest about what you can no longer carry. Honest about where you've been delaying. Honest about what you already know deep down. That honesty creates space for clarity to take root. This test is also about letting go of timing expectations. You may need to release how you thought things would unfold. Clarity often comes wrapped differently than expected. If you insist on a specific form, you may miss the substance. Archangel Michael says flexibility is a sign of readiness. Rigid expectations block revelation. As you listen now, notice what is stirring within you. Is there a sense of recognition, a quiet agreement, or resistance? None of these disqualify you. They simply reveal where you are in the process. The clarity test is not passed by perfection. It is passed by willingness. Archangel Michael wants you to know that if you are hearing this message, you are closer than you think. The test itself is proof that clarity is already near. Take a moment now to respond, not out loud if you cannot, but within. Acknowledge your readiness, even if it feels fragile. That acknowledgement is powerful. Type "I am ready" to receive in the comments if this message speaks to you. Lesson code 842 is now activated. As you do, allow this truth to settle. Clarity is not something you chase. It is something you permit. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed next. As this test of readiness unfolds, I feel led to speak directly to you. When you support this mission, you are not giving to a channel. You are fueling a river of clarity that reaches people standing at their own crossroads. The Lord is saying, when you sow into this word, I will open understanding like flowing water where there was drought. I want you to hear this personally. Your obedience in giving is a response to what God is doing right now. This is a prophetic moment, not a passive one. Act while the window is open. I bless every giver with discernment, stability, and peace that guards your next steps. You super thanks. Become a member or give through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on screen. Do it now and let your seed speak in places your voice cannot. Once clarity hath been received, the journey does not pause. It begins to move. Archangel Michael says this is where many people stumble, not because they lack direction, but because they are unused to walking without second-guessing every step. Walking forward with clarity requires a new rhythm, a new trust, and a new relationship with decision-making. You are no longer circling questions, you are responding to answers, and that shift changes how you move through everything. Walking forward with Archangel Michael does not mean you suddenly feel bold every day. Courage, in this season, is quieter. It looks like consistency. It looks like choosing alignment even when emotions fluctuate. Archangel Michael explains that once clarity is established, the enemy's strategy changes. Confusion no longer works, so distraction is introduced. You may be tempted to delay action by staying busy with things that feel productive but are unrelated to your true direction. This is why intentional movement matters now. The first step forward is often small. A conversation you've been avoiding. A boundary you need to establish. A decision you need to stop postponing. Clarity does not always demand dramatic leaps. It often asks for honest steps. Archangel Michael says obedience in small things stabilizes the path for bigger ones. Do not underestimate the power of a single aligned action taken with peace. As you walk forward, you will notice a shift in how resistance feels. It may still appear, but it no longer feels personal. You stop interpreting challenges as signs you're wrong. Instead, you recognize them as confirmations that movement is happening. Archangel Michael stands as your defender here, not removing every obstacle, but guarding your discernment so obstacles do not redirect you unnecessarily. Another key to walking forward is acting without over-explaining. When clarity comes from God, you do not need consensus to obey. You may feel a release from the need to justify yourself to people who do not understand your direction. This is not arrogance, it is maturity. Archangel Michael says explaining is often a form of seeking permission. And when heaven has already given permission, you do not need approval from fear or opinion. You may also notice a strengthening of inner authority. You begin to trust your no as much as your yes. You stop negotiating with discomfort when you know something is misaligned. This inner authority is not harsh. It is calm. It allows you to move forward without dragging old indecision behind you. Walking forward also requires you to stay present. Clarity does not ask you to figure out the next 10 steps. It asks you to honor the next one. Archangel Michael warns against returning to future tripping, trying to predict outcomes before they arrive. That habit belongs to uncertainty, not clarity. Stay where your feet are. Alignment happens in the now. This is also a season where commitment matters. Not perfection, but commitment to direction. You may still have days where doubt whispers, but commitment keeps you from turning back every time it does. Archangel Michael says forward movement is less about confidence and more about loyalty to what has been revealed. As you walk forward, you are not meant to do this alone. That is why this message is shared and why community matters. If this message is guiding you, I want to invite you to stay connected. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, so you remain anchored in clarity-based guidance rather than drifting back into confusion. Share this message with someone who needs direction right now. And if you feel led, comment something simple like "I'm moving forward" as a declaration of alignment. These actions are not routine. They are markers. They reinforce your decision to walk in clarity. Archangel Michael also emphasizes patience in progress. Forward movement does not always feel fast, but it is consistent. Do not measure your journey against others. Clarity personalizes pace. What matters is that you are no longer standing still. There will be moments when you are tempted to revisit old paths out of familiarity. In those moments, remember this: clarity is not fragile. You do not lose it by moving forward imperfectly. You lose it by refusing to move at all. Keep going, even if the steps feel ordinary. Ordinary obedience often leads to extraordinary alignment. Walking forward with Archangel Michael means trusting protection you cannot always see. You are guarded from detours you never notice. You are shielded from decisions that would have drained you. This protection works best when you keep moving. Stagnation invites doubt. Movement reinforces trust. As you take these steps, something subtle but powerful happens. You begin to recognize yourself again. The version of you that trusts, that decides, that acts without constant inner conflict. This is not a new you. It is a restored you. And here is the part many do not expect. The more you walk forward, the clearer things become. Clarity deepens with obedience. Your action sharpens with movement. Peace strengthens with trust. This is why the first step matters so much. Stay with this message, because what comes next ties everything together in a way that will anchor you even deeper. This journey is not ending. It is unfolding. January 31 is not just a date on a calendar. Archangel Michael says it is a marker in your story. A spiritual timestamp. A line drawn quietly, but firmly across your journey, where things begin to separate into before and after. Not because everything instantly changes, but because you do. One day from now, you may not remember every detail of what you felt, but you will remember that something shifted here. Markers are not always dramatic. They are often recognized in hindsight. You look back weeks or months later and realize, that was the moment I stopped doubting myself. Or that was when I finally chose direction over delay. Archangel Michael says January 31 will be remembered not for what happened around you, but for what settled within you. Is the day confusion lost its voice, even if it tried to whisper afterward. This date becomes a marker because it represents agreement. Agreement between heaven and your will. Agreement between what God has been showing you and what you finally accepted. Until agreement happens, revelation remains theoretical. Once agreement happens, revelation becomes history. January 31 marks the moment clarity moved from possibility into possession. You may not fully grasp the importance of this day yet, and that is okay. Some markers reveal their weight slowly. Like a seed planted quietly in the soil, its significance is hidden until growth appears above ground. Archangel Michael says the decisions you make after today will carry a different quality. Less fear-driven. Less reactive. More intentional. A difference will trace back to this moment. This date also marks a shift in how you remember the past. Before clarity, the past often feels heavy, confusing, or unfinished. After clarity, the past begins to make sense. Not because every pain is justified, but because every season finds its place. January 31 becomes the point where your story stops feeling fragmented and starts feeling coherent. Pieces that once felt random begin to align. Archangel Michael explains that heaven records obedience moments differently than accomplishments. Achievements impress people, but obedience moves timelines. January 31 is recorded not for what you achieved, but for what you agreed to. Agreement is powerful. It authorizes movement. It unlocks sequences that were waiting on your yes, even if that yes was quiet and internal. You may notice that after today, you refer to things differently. Instead of saying I'm not sure, you say I'm moving forward. Instead of I'm waiting, you say I'm preparing. Language shifts when identity shifts. And identity often shifts at turning points like this one. January 31 marks the day you stopped identifying as uncertain and started identifying as directed. This state also becomes a reference point in moments of future doubt. There will be days when questions try to resurface, when old fears attempt to reintroduce themselves. In those moments, Archangel Michael says you will remember this marker. You will remember that clarity was given, that peace was present, that direction was established. Markers anchor faith. They remind you that God has already spoken. January 31 is also a marker because it closes a chapter, not abruptly but definitively. Seasons do not always end with fireworks. Some end with quiet resolve. You simply stop returning to them. You stop asking the same questions. You stop waiting for the same answers. That is how you know a chapter has closed, not because it was announced, but because it no longer has power. At the same time, this date opens a new chapter, one where responsibility replaces hesitation, where movement replaces analysis, where trust replaces fear. Archangel Michael says new chapters rarely begin with full clarity about the ending. They begin with clarity about the next step. That is enough. This marker also affects how heaven responds moving forward. When clarity is honored, guidance increases. Not because God withholds from others, but because responsiveness creates momentum. The more you respond, the more direction flows. January 31 marks the day responsiveness was restored. Do not rush to make this day meaningful by force. Its meaning will reveal itself naturally as you walk forward. Some days are understood immediately, others unfold slowly. Both are sacred. What matters is that this day is acknowledged, not just remembered, but respected. Archangel Michael wants you to know that this marker is not fragile. You do not lose it by having questions later. You do not erase it by moving imperfectly. Markers are not about perfection. They are about direction. And direction has been established. Years from now, when you look back at your journey, there will be a subtle but undeniable shift you can trace to this moment. A point where things stopped looping and started progressing. Where uncertainty stopped narrating your story. January 31 stands quietly but firmly in your timeline, declaring, "This is where it changed." This is the moment where words are no longer explanatory. They are declarative. Archangel Michael steps forward now not to describe what could happen, but to speak into what is happening. This declaration is not theory. It is alignment in motion. And as you hear it, understand this. Prophetic declarations do not create truth. They activate what has already been authorized in the spiritual realm. Archangel Michael declares that confusion no longer has permission to narrate your decisions. The cycle of second-guessing, hesitation, and mental exhaustion is being interrupted. What once felt tangled is being straightened. What once felt delayed is being reordered. You are not late. You are not behind. You are not missing anything that belongs to you. Timing is recalibrating now. I declare over you that clarity is settling into your spirit with stability. Not emotional excitement that fades, but grounded knowing that remains. You will recognize direction without needing to force certainty. You will sense when to move and when to wait without anxiety. Discernment is being sharpened, not through pressure but through peace. Archangel Michael declares that the weight you have been carrying, responsibilities that were never yours, guilt that was never assigned to you, expectations that did not come from God, is being lifted. You are not called to carry what drains your alignment. You are released from false burdens now. Your strength is being restored because your load is being corrected. I declare that fear will no longer disguise itself as wisdom in your life. You will recognize the difference between caution that protects and fear that paralyzes. When fear speaks, it will no longer sound authoritative. When truth speaks, it will resonate clearly. Your inner compass is being recalibrated. Archangel Michael declares protection over your next steps. Not protection from challenge, but protection from derailment. You will not be led into confusion disguised as opportunity. You will not be pulled off course by urgency that lacks peace. What is not aligned will lose its appeal. What is aligned will feel steady, even if it requires courage. I declare restoration of trust. Trust in God's voice, and trust in your ability to hear it. The damage caused by prolonged uncertainty is being healed. Where you doubted your discernment, confidence is returning. Where you question your sensitivity, clarity is affirming you. You are not spiritually dull. You were simply in transition. Archangel Michael declares that your decisions will begin to produce fruit. Not all at once, but consistently. Small obediences will yield noticeable peace. Honest steps will open strategic doors. You will see confirmation not through dramatic signs, but through sustained progress. Momentum is being established. I declare that your mind is being quieted. Racing thoughts are settling. Mental noise is decreasing. You will think more clearly, sleep more restfully, and respond more intentionally. Peace is not being added to your life. It is being restored to its rightful place. Archangel Michael declares separation where it is needed. Relationships, habits, and mindsets that thrived in your uncertainty will no longer feel comfortable. This is not loss. It is alignment. What remains will support your direction, not compete with it. What leaves was never meant to follow you forward. I declare courage over you, not the loud kind, but the steady kind. A courage to act without applause. The courage to trust without guarantees. The courage to keep moving even when progress feels ordinary. This courage will not exhaust you. It will strengthen you. Archangel Michael declares that your prayers are shifting. You will no longer pray from confusion, but from cooperation. You will ask with clarity and listen with expectation. Your prayer life will feel less strained and more relational. You are moving from pleading to partnering. I declare that the season of circling is ending. Repetition without progress is being broken. You are stepping into linear movement, forward, intentional, and purposeful. Detours will no longer distract you. You will recognize when something is unnecessary and have the strength to decline it. Archangel Michael declares peace over your identity. You are not indecisive. You are discerning. You are not behind. You are aligned. You are not uncertain. You are transitioning into clarity. Speak this over yourself when doubt tries to revisit. I declare that what has been revealed to you will not fade. Clarity will deepen as you walk. Direction will strengthen as you obey. Confidence will grow as you remain committed. You are not responsible for outcomes, only for alignment. Let this declaration settle. Do not rush past it. These words are not motivational. They are spiritual authorization. And what has been authorized in the spiritual realm will begin to manifest in the natural as you continue forward. This declaration seals what has already begun. Clarity has replaced uncertainty. Direction has been established. And the next step will meet you exactly where you are. As this message comes to a close, Archangel Michael speaks not with urgency now, but with assurance. The kind of assurance that settles the heart and quiets the mind. He wants you to know that clarity is not something you must constantly defend or fight to keep. Once received, it becomes part of you. It anchors you. It steadies you. And even on days when emotions fluctuate, that clarity remains like a compass beneath the surface, always pointing you forward. You are not leaving this moment alone. You are not stepping into uncertainty again. What has shifted within you today does not reverse overnight. Alignment, once established, has weight. It carries momentum. And Archangel Michael says that heaven honors consistency more than intensity. You do not need to be perfect moving forward. You only need to be faithful to what has been revealed. There will still be choices ahead. There will still be moments that require courage. But the difference now is this: you will not face them from confusion. You will face them from clarity. And clarity changes how challenges are experienced. It turns obstacles into instructions. It turns delays into refinements. It turns waiting into preparation rather than frustration. Archangel Michael reassures you that peace will be your confirmation going forward. Not excitement. Not approval. Peace. When peace is present, you are aligned. When peace withdraws, you are being redirected. Learn to honor that signal. It is one of the greatest gifts clarity brings. You may wonder what happens if doubt tries to return. Archangel Michael answers simply: doubt may knock, but it no longer has a key. You are not required to entertain every thought. You are not required to revisit every fear. You are allowed to say no to confusion now. That authority has been restored to you. This is also a moment of gratitude. Not because everything is resolved, but because direction has been given. Gratitude seals clarity. It acknowledges that what you've received is enough for today. Tomorrow's guidance will meet you when tomorrow arrives. Do not borrow worry from the future. Today hath been fully supplied. Archangel Michael wants you to rest in this truth. You did not miss your moment. You did not arrive late. You did not fail to hear. You are exactly where you need to be. January 31 was not about rushing you into action. It was about releasing you from delay. And that release has already begun. As you move forward, stay gentle with yourself. Growth does not always feel strong. It often feels tender. Let clarity mature naturally. Let confidence build through obedience. Let peace deepen through trust. You are not being measured by speed, but by alignment. Now, receive this final blessing. Type "I walk in clarity" in the comments if you receive this word. Blessing code 916 is now activated. This blessing seals what hath been spoken. It marks this message not as inspiration, but as impartation. You are stepping forward differently because something within you has changed. As this word settles and clarity takes root, I want to speak to you heart to heart. What you received today did not begin with me, and it does not end with you. When you give to this mission, you are helping God send light into places where confusion still rules and hope feels distant. I hear the Lord saying, those who release seed into this word will never lack direction when it matters most. I am personally inviting you to act now, while the clarity is fresh and the door is open. Your giving is not a donation. It is a prophetic response that releases blessing back into your life. I declare that every giver will walk with peace, provision, and protection in their decisions. So now, through Super Thanks, become a channel member or give through the PayPal link in the description or the PayPal QR code on screen. Do it now, and let your obedience speak long after this video ends. This is not the end, it is the beginning. Clarity has replaced uncertainty, and you are moving forward under divine guidance.